The Fresh Foam LAV V2 is New Balance's first new shoe in quite a while, and it is a serious departure from the original LAVs. So let's cut it open and see what it's made of. Hey, what is up? Zach here, and let me tell you, there is so much to get to in this shoe. I am not wasting any time, so let's start right into it with the fit. Now, I intentionally bought my size in the D width and not the double E just to see what the true fit of these are. And even in the D width, my normal size was just fine. Really no break-in time over the last couple days, just walking around in them. Really, if you're gonna go up to that double E, you better be pretty wide, as I really had no problem just with the standard size. And the one reason this shoe fits a little bit wider than the old LAVs and the 996 and the 696 and the standard D width is because of how wide the lateral flange is on this shoe. So you are getting a ton more stability in this shoe than the original LAVs too, as well as just a little bit more forgiveness in the forefoot if you're a wider player. And unlike the original LAVs, the Fresh Foam X in these is quite a different experience underfoot. You do get a ton of buoyancy under the heel versus the old LAVs were just a little harder under the heel. Now getting into the uppers, the LAV V2 is a true woven upper. It's a little more forgiving than the original LAVs, which are a little more of almost like a wicker basket type feeling. These ones also have a really robust DuraGuard going around the toe cap and onto the medial side. And on the upper durability test, Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, DuraGuard is really excellent, not even a millimeter of damage there. It doesn't even get into that woven layer. So this actually does have quite a good durability profile for the toe cap of the shoe. And I'm not sure who came up with it first, but New Balance and Lacoste both have this really thin tongue with that memory foam going right down the pad so that the laces don't dig into the front part of your foot. And if you remember back from the original LAV V1, that was a slipper tongue. They have changed this to a 3-piece, which is a substantial upgrade. And speaking of upgrades, if you look at the heel counter, it is now a lot higher than the original LAV V1 too, because there was some heel slippage problems with some people on that shoe. They have corrected that with a much higher heel counter, much more secure. And with that secure heel counter, New Balance has put a huge external outrigger heel counter here made of plastic. This thing is super strong. It is also just physically pretty heavy. Now the outsole treads on these are really interesting. It is one continuous bed of rubber, which I do love. Those continuous patterns just give you a ton of opportunity for grip on the court. However, it is a pretty odd pattern. It is a wave that goes all the way from the heel up to the ball of the foot. There is some variable angle here in the forefoot and then just some pores that come around here in the toe cap. It kind of remains to be seen how well this is going to grip given how shallow the tread depth is, but that's why we do a play test. And on the outsole durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, a solid 1 millimeter of damage, which in and of itself is pretty average for tennis shoes. However, it's only a 3 millimeter tread depth, so these aren't going to be the most durable outsole rubbers you'll put on your foot. Kind of remains to be seen what that profile is going to create in terms of grip on an actual court. And I think the most interesting part of this shoe comes in the midsole teardown. Now New Balance has put Fresh Foam X in the LAV V2. Now according to New Balance, Fresh Foam X is a more advanced form of EVA, which means that the cells of the EVA, the individual cells that make up the foam, have now convex and concave sidewalls, which means that they can heat press it and laser engrave it to make certain parts of the shoe more resistant to compression and some other areas be more bouncy and more cushioned depending on where you need it. And specifically on the LAV V2, New Balance has said that they have laser etched this EVA into wider and less dense hexagonal pods in the heel for more comfort and cushioning, but more dense hexagonal plugs in the forefoot for just more density and more stability. And as you can see here, they've kind of stamped it on the outside to get a little more visual interest, but once you tear the shoe down, it is just less dense EVA here in the heel and then more dense here in the forefoot. But you can tell that this is much springier, much more cushioned, less dense, airy, and then you get in the forefoot, it is a little bit harder. The one thing I also did notice on this midsole teardown, the shank on the LAV V2 is not very strong. It's a little bit more of just to add just some stability to the shoe. It's not really there to really hold your arch up. But the one thing you can't ignore in the midsole teardown is the absolute stack of foam they're giving you in this shoe. A 3 centimeter heel height and a 1.4 centimeter heel to toe drop. This shoe is just an absolute beast when it comes to its foam stack. And the reason I get so excited about that is there's so many shoes out there that look like they have this big stack of foam in there, and then when you cut it open, it's just minuscule and it's just pretty much all window dressing, not the LAVs. But with that increase in foam, you are getting a little bit of an increase in weight. For my size, 11.5, 15.63 ounces. Now it's going to be a little less for the standard 10.5 we normally judge shoes for, and just a hair more if you go for the wider width. Now this isn't the heaviest shoe by any means, but it's also not the lightest, which is a little surprising because when you look at them from a distance, they look like a really light minimalist shoe. When you put them on, different story. So I definitely think New Balance has come up with some really interesting and intuitive upgrades to the second generation of the LAV. Now we still have the most important test to go, the actual on-court performance review. Now if you want to see that video, make sure you're subscribed because that video is coming up next.